Hi, this is Richard from Garden Off, where we explore all things to do with the creation of regenerative foodscapes. And today we're here with Dan Woolley of Greenbridge Design and Implementation. How are you?
Yeah, good man. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about Greenbridge and what you guys provide?
Yeah, we've been going now for almost 5 years, and we have three aspects to the business: regenerative landscapes, healthy homes, and resilient communities. I did a little bit of pre-thinking here, so just looking at my sheet of paper. So within those different areas of focus, we do pre-purchase reports, and that can also be for property marketing, landscape and garden design and advice, renovation and design of new homes and renovations of homes, obviously, and project management of that implementation. This year we're also looking to develop something we've been looking at for the last 2 years, which is a set home eco home plan range, which is really about getting small scale, small footprint, beautiful homes that have got all the features that people are looking for into set plans. Community scale projects as well that focus on both ecological and community enhancement, and that can be all sorts of different things. So we've had a few examples of that. And we also delve into the education side of things and do various workshops and etc. So that's sort of the main works we do.
What have you found has been the most popular? What have people shown the most interested in so far?
It really goes all over the place.
Yeah.
So at the moment we've got the property that we're on is a 32-acre eco farm design and implementation. You'll find out a bit more about that. We've also got a suburban home renovation. We've got a suburban new home design, and also the regenerative landscaping of that property, so that's a different one. And we've got a 75 square metre new build, architectural design and build. We're not actually doing the build on that one, we're just doing the design. We are also doing the design and implementation of a subdivision, so we're doing a 3-lot subdivision at the moment, and the last project is the design for New Plymouth District Council's new resource recovery centre.
Wow. Okay.
So that's quite a range, So that's why I was thinking I better write them down, otherwise I'll forget one. That's our current projects on the go.
Okay, and who's the team that's involved with this?
So we've got a 3-person in-house team. We were a 5-person team, but I dropped that down to a 3-person in-house team simply because I've found with certain aspects it's actually better for the projects to bring in the right person for the project rather than have. So we had 2 architects in-house, and now, although we still work with those architects sometimes, we actually take work out and we'll get in a draftsperson here or a different person depending on what the project requires.
Use of contractors and
and it's also about setting up the right collaborations.
Yeah.
So the right team for the right project.
Have you found the resource of contractors in this area has been good for that?
Yeah, there's always learnings, and what I say to actually our clients is that our knowledge of the people that we bring in outside of our direct team is probably at least 50% of the value that we're bringing to the project. Because when you're doing a project like the one we're on, or even a small renovation, it's really hard. Who's a good builder? Who's a good electrician? Who's a good this X, Y, Z? Who's the right drafty that's going to give you what you need but not cost you extra? And a punter, a client can't figure that out on a project. So our experience of dealing with different people and knowing who's best for that particular project, that's actually worth quite a lot.
And how's it been like finding people that are aligned with the values of the company and understand your perspective on your take on landscape design? Has it been?
Yeah, it's been a work in progress. So some people it's a easy, perfect fit, and other people it's a matter of sort of getting to know each other, and without coming from a place of condescending, bringing them up to speed in the environmental, ecological, permaculture sort of approach to things. So it's not insurmountable. It just takes a bit of time, and like anything, it's about developing relationships.
Can you tell us a little bit about the journey that's led you to developing this business?
Yeah, I can. So myself and my wife have always been sort of environmentally concerned or aware, and I've been in design and management for must be close to 20 years, probably at least 20 years now. went back and thought about it.
Okay, and what kind of context, kind of urban?
So that was, I started off with an industrial design degree and did kitchen design initially. And figured out after a year of that I didn't overly love it, so I did it for another 15 years just to really make sure, you've got to be sure of these things. And so during that process also went from design through to, I ended up having my own, I worked in Australia, worked in the UK, worked in New Zealand, had my own business in Wellington, where I ended up training designers that were doing the work for me. And then I was pulling together basically the team to pull together implementation. So that would be for full renovation. So it could be a kitchen or an extension on a house, and then I'd pull in the right plumber, the right builder, the right XYZ just to make it all happen. So there was a lot of that skill set that I brought to this business that I'd already learnt elsewhere. So, and really what Greenbridge was about was going back to the passion of doing something that I could really believe in and be excited about and put my name to. After coming across permaculture, it made a lot of sense, so that's a lot of what we bring to the design. Probably when we're talking to people, however, we focus more on the term holistic design, because it more accurately encapsulates what we do. It's not all just about permaculture. And holistic design is really about looking at every aspect of the project and designing it with the whole through to the parts, so in both directions, which most permaculturists are familiar with as an idea.
It seems to me like the development of small businesses offer a real solution to bringing some of these more regenerative practices into the communities and offering those services, but also quite a challenge to be able to successfully set up those small businesses. And just wondering what kind of challenges you encountered in those early days of setting up the businesses and how you overcame some of that.
Yeah, some quite big challenges. I mean, we did it the hard way. So we moved to Taranaki from Kapiti. We'd been living in Kapiti for 7 years. So I moved to a new town. We bought 10 acres, which no one in their right mind should really ever do. And that was a really rough piece of degraded, overgrazed property. We then lived in a caravan as a family with 2 young children for a year, while I did a full redesign of the house and the area, and then brought a relocate house on site, and then I did the lion's share of pulling it apart and rebuilding it. So, and just to make things more interesting, we thought we'd start a new business and do it in an industry that didn't yet exist. So I wouldn't really wish it upon anyone. So that's the journey that we took to starting off, and then it was really a process of learning as we went. As I was saying to you earlier today, the first year was really just figuring out what the heck is a sustainable consultancy and what does it provide, because at that stage there wasn't really anything to copy off. The second year was getting some basic processes and pricing in place, and that's getting pricing is really important in the early stages, because people don't really want to come to you with an open checkbook and say, yeah, do what you want. They need to know at the outset what can you do and what's it likely to cost me. And so getting to a point where you could give people that information quickly is quite a big challenge. And so that was the next year in developing our processes. Third year we took on Karma Well, so then we were a 3-person team, and by the end of that year we'd done quite a bit of work and realised, okay, yep, this is probably feasible as a business. So up until then we'd been largely supporting ourselves through our mortgage and getting a bit of pocket money from the business occasionally. And the next year we took on the 2 architects, did another year with the 5-person team. And then we made an income, not a particularly flash one, in that 4th year, and then this 5th year that we're in at the moment, just coming close to finishing. This is the first year that we've taken what you'd consider a reasonable income from the business. So it didn't. What's Rachel Hunter say? It didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. So
that sounds like a tricky journey. Kind of looking back retrospectively now, what kind of advice might you give to someone following a similar journey as to make a few shortcuts along the way and avoid some of those pitfalls? I
think everyone's got their own path, and there's these two main different ways about doing it. Having an income over here while developing something here, and that's a valid way. That brings its own challenges, and I purposely decided not to go down that path because of the whole split energy. But it makes it a lot easier on the financial position and therefore the stress. So that's a valid approach. I'd say mentoring and finding people you can learn from would be a really a key piece of recommendation. Being really clear about what it is you know and the skills that you bring and what the problems are you're going to help people solve.
Okay.
That's a good question to ask. So what problems that your clients have are you going to help them solve?
Okay.
And if you don't know the answer to that question, then you're probably not starting from a good place. Actually, I just remembered I was talking to you earlier today when we were having a cup of tea, and I mentioned that businesses can be likened to a game of poker.
Yep.
And that you might want to start a plumbing business as a plumber, and you're a good plumber, but being a good plumber is really only just paying for your chips, and once you get into it, then the real game begins. And what that's really talking about is you have to understand marketing, you have to understand sales, you have to understand your finances, you have to understand your service offer, you have to understand a whole plethora of things to run a business and do it in a way that you can succeed. And so there's a lot of traditional business knowledge that you're going to get from actually any business, whether it's ethical or not. A lot of that information is going to be critical to making it successful or not.
Yeah, how do you market a new business like that if it's not established and people don't know it's a service that's available? How do you go about actually marketing that?
There's a lot of different ways to go about it, and everyone's going to find their own tools that they like to work with. Social media for us is a really powerful tool, and obviously it's a really cost-effective tool. So we've done a bunch of other things. Running workshops and doing teaching generally won't make you any money. It might, if you're lucky, it might break even, cover your costs, but what it does is it gets you out there.
Yeah.
So that can be a really good way of just getting your face out there, getting your name out there. Home shows and the like, that can be another avenue, but that's a little bit of a harder path, a bit more cost, and you have to know what you're doing, or you have to figure out how to make it work for you. You don't want to be just taking a bunch of leads, you want to end up bringing some form of work, otherwise you're spending a few grand on a show that you're not getting any return from, which you can only do so many times.
And how would you go about managing the cloud? I imagine many people want quite a self-sufficient, ideal dream lifestyle, and to be able to create that in a landscape. How do you kind of manage those expectations and work to develop something that's a bit more realistic and within their budget and more able to be created?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing is actually a philosophy of meeting the client where they're at. To start with, you can't, if you know that something could be here and the client's over here, you can't take them straight to that. It doesn't work. You want to meet them here, really close to where they're at, be able to talk to them where they're at, and then help them maybe grow or see a little bit further than they're currently seeing. And so that's a really key strategy. And so as a designer, I think of anything, an important part of the process is becoming a good, I can't think of a better term, but a good educator. So you're teaching the client and engaging them in the process. Another thing that we try to really install in what we do is we try not to do everything for the client, and even our process itself, we like to give people options. So even when we are doing all the design, that we're really engaging them and getting feedback, and so it's not a design for us, it's a design for the client and their site. And that's really key, because if you're not doing that, then the likelihood is they're not actually going to implement it, and you're going to end up maybe making a little bit of money and doing some pretty drawings, but if you actually want to see something being done on the ground, it's important that the client takes ownership of it. So
just thinking it would be really nice to have a tour of this site, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about the Greenbridge before we...
Let me have a little look at my prepared notes from last night. So I suppose just I'll mention a couple of, and feel free to cut this out later, a few other sort of significant projects to give you an idea of things that we've done. So we've done master planning and landscape and home design of a six lot pocket neighbourhood. We've done concept design for a rural papakainga with a local Māori hapu. We've also done assessment, design and report for a regenerative diversification of a 64 hectare dairy farm.
Just touching on that Māori hapu one.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me was having that community dynamic in a permaculture design and integrating it in with the cultural values that community embodies. And the whole Māori community structure seems like the ideal match to being able to do that. How did you find?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask that, because pocket neighbourhoods, and people can look that up to get a better idea of what a pocket neighbourhood's about, but the concepts of pocket neighbourhoods, co-housing and papakainga, they're all very similar. Obviously you've got a cultural overlay that you're bringing in with papakaingas, but the actual physical infrastructure and how you're thinking about laying it out doesn't change that much from theme to theme. It changes a bit from pocket neighbourhoods to co-housing, but a lot of the work that we've done, and we've done quite a few projects like that now, there's a lot of flow-throughs and information and ideas and processes that are very similar, and then it's just about being culturally appropriate. And even, with my fair skin, I'm Ngāpuhi, so I'm actually part Māori, so I don't pretend to have a deep cultural knowing. So what it really comes down to then is talking with your client, and that's the same regardless of the situation, and getting them to bring the specific knowledge of the project that's important to it. So, and it's the same whether it's a papakainga, or I suppose if you did any different, if you did a Chinese, pocket neighbourhood, they're all going to have their certain cultural expectations, and you need to consider that in the design as well.
Okay. And is that something there's more of them emerging?
Oh, very much so. So my colleague Karma Burwell is involved in a local New Plymouth co-housing group who's going to be developing a site here in New Plymouth, and so hopefully Greenbridge will be involved in that process as well. There's actually quite a few things happening both nationally and internationally, of course, and there's some things happening locally. We've also done a design for a 30 dwelling medium density eco village for locally, so I'm not sure if that's going to go ahead, but so that's another exciting one. We've done a 316 hectare farm diversification assessment and report for an overseas investment application for a client that's looking to move to New Zealand, and they wanted to look at moving from what was currently essentially a dairy runoff farm, a grazing farm, through to a permaculture farm.
Wow, okay.
Okay, so that's a really exciting project. Not sure if that's going to go ahead, whether they buy the property or not. What else have we done? We've also been involved in some work up in Auckland. So we do travel for work, but only for projects that excite us and that it makes sense to travel for. So we were involved with Ockham Residential's latest project up there, which is a Benoli Gardens apartments, and that's 116 apartments. And so we did all the landscape design, which was really about doing regenerative landscape design that supported community interaction within an apartment setting. So that's taken a different way again. So that gives you sort of another idea of the sort of projects that we've been involved with.
And what do you see as the growth of Greenbridge bring in the next 5 years? Have you got a bit of a vision?
A vision? To tell you the truth, I used to, and now I'm not so sure. I initially had intended to get our processes and systems running so well here that I'd be able to regionalise and have outlets of Greenbridge in other main centres, with the intent simply to get that information and those skills out there and into different communities. That still may or may not happen. The thing that's probably closer to my heart is that the other idea on the back of that was that if we regionalised, that we'd open eco-incubators in each area that would help various sustainable businesses, whether that came from an idea startup, to assess the idea and then give if it was a worthwhile idea, to give mentoring support through how to get that up off the ground and successful.
I was thinking that would be the challenge, won't it, in having new hubs in different areas, is the whole mentoring and training of people to take on a role in an industry that's new in an area people haven't got a good background in.
Well, that's right. Well, and it's obviously that's the big vision, that's the long-term vision. So I don't know what a time frame on that is, and we obviously have to have our own runs on the board before we even start thinking seriously about that. But that is something that I could get really excited about being a part of, because it's great the work that Greenbridge does, but it's only one aspect of the world we live in. Whereas the exciting thing about something like a eco-incubator is it can literally bleed out to all aspects of what we do and touch. And it came back to that thing that we were talking about earlier today as well, and that I really see businesses as being responsible and being part of the vision towards creating a desirable future for New Zealand and the world. So business owners taking up that accountability and the challenge and saying, okay, if we want to make this world a better place, it's obviously not going to be the politicians. We can't wait for them. It's not going to happen. And businesses are a powerful force in our communities, and whether that's a small scale business or a large scale business, if people can embody the values of triple bottom line and other ethics that permaculture believe in, then it's going to make a big difference to the world we live in.
Maybe just on the back of that, if you wouldn't mind just putting the permaculture into perspective a little bit, and what permaculture is and how that supports the service you provide in your business.
What is permaculture? So permaculture to me is a design system that is essentially looking at how humans can live in cohabitation with their environment in a positive way.
Okay.
And it's really a systems approach to doing that and a design approach to doing that. And so it's one of the tools that we have in our kit, permaculture. But as I say, there's others that we bring in. There's holistic decision making, there's holistic design, there's all sorts of other ecological processes, whether it be biological farming, whether it be, and the list goes on. And so that's one of the many. And so it's an important part of what we do, but I try actually not to focus on it too much for several reasons. One, because if you're focusing on one thing too much, you get blinded to other opportunities and learnings, but also because the reality is a lot of the people you're going to be talking to, they don't know what permaculture is, and you don't want to be spending your time explaining a specific concept. You want to be finding out what they want and then helping them get there. And sometimes you might mention the word permaculture and sometimes you might not. It may or may not be relevant, but it doesn't mean it's not behind the scenes.
Okay. And how would you explain that thinking process in a nutshell of integrating those different ideas? So if you're working on a client on a site, how would you implement that decision and design making process on that site?
For us, it's actually we've developed quite a methodical process.
Okay.
So I'll pick an example, which would be a lifestyle block. So the first part might be, is this the right property to buy? They may not have bought it yet. So it would be about defining the brief of what it is you're hoping to achieve, and then looking at the reality versus the dream and just being realistic about that. And sometimes we have to help people in that, and I've found that actually just helping people get clear about their brief is one of the most powerful things you can do. And a lot of people just aren't very good at being clear about what they need to be looking for. And then will this property give that? Has it got the potential to provide that? Or meet those needs?
Do you find that situation occurs much, or have people kind of jumped into a property and process and then
both
into the design?
Definitely both things.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked people out of buying properties.
Okay.
Some of our earliest work was telling people not to buy properties, which you'd think that's just doing us out of our own work, but you've got to be realistic about what people are trying to achieve and what a property is about. And often, people aren't realistic about the work that it takes in a life sentence block, which is the other nickname for a lifestyle block. And just being realistic about how much time, their skills, what's actually going to happen in the real world. Even just cost of development. One of the earliest properties we looked at was going to take about $100,000 just to get reliable access in to the only house site, and so it made it very hard to justify. And obviously we look at more than just the finances, but if you add $100,000 onto the purchase price of a property, it makes it really tough as a starting point.
How do you justify implementing this design process on their property at this early stages, as opposed to trial and error and implementing their own ideas over time? What would be the advantages of
pros and cons? I think that both approaches have merit. The benefit of going through a process. So I'll just sort of can you bring me back to that question? Because so we've looked at a property, and then the next thing we do is we get a brief.
Okay.
So this is the process that we go through. We get a clear brief, and then we assess the site. Yep. So it's the combination of the brief and the site, what the site's asking for. So this is sort of bringing that holistic vision, so that you understand what the client's trying to achieve. You understand the site and what it can support, and then it's about going through a design process of going from a concept through to a final design, And we've got a whole process that we follow, which is ideally a multi-concept design process that gets resolved through to a final design, and that involves the client. And through that process, you are looking at all the different things, and you're looking at access, you're looking at siting, you're looking at water, both groundwater and also water that you're using in your house. You're looking at your energy use, you're looking at your plantings, you're looking at animals to be on site. And you're bringing all these things together, and you're getting a feel of the whole and individual elements. And the key is really to do that well, you need to be able to see the whole picture. And so often you'll go to a project where it's being developed in parts without an understanding of the whole, and it costs more money, it doesn't work well, and there's often rework and problems down the track. So that's what the holistic approach is, really to avoid that. And we kind of often save our clients huge amounts of money just in those initial conversations, just from an understanding of looking at the whole picture.
Well, maybe we can have a